Well, welcome all of you who've joined us here in the main stage. We're about to start our second session for the day. Our next speaker is literally getting on a plane to Australia about a minute after he finishes here, so I want to get him on stage as fast as possible. Quick mention before I do about the Digital Innovators Tour to New York and Washington, 7th to 12th of May next year, visiting Accenture, Atlantic Media, Google, Facebook, National Geographic, Washington Post, loads more. More information on the Reg Desk if you'd like to do that. But for now, we saw this morning about how the options available to all of us as media owners are colossal, and what brings all of those options together is the connectedness of the consumer. And our next speaker is going to explain to us how marketers and we as media owners need to adapt to the new reality of multiple connections, people being connected all the time to pretty much everything. So please welcome the co-founder and managing partner at mCordis and the Connected Marketer Institute in the UK and the USA, Paul Berney. Paul.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, and thanks to the organisers for the introduction and the invitation to speak. So I'm going to try to fit in what I originally thought was a 30-minute presentation into 20 minutes, so if I go too fast, don't worry, you'll have the slides at the end to catch up with. It seems appropriate, if I'm going to be speaking in Germany and speaking at a publisher event, to start with a German innovator in the printing world. But not the story that you know, the innovation, the democratization of information, all of that. But if you read further into the story of Gutenberg, the part that really interests me is the fact that when he first developed and introduced the printing technology, that many people simply could not get their heads around how this technology was going to change their worlds. They didn't understand the depth and the breadth of the change that would come to the entire world through what he has introduced. And actually, this is pretty common to us as human beings. There's this thing called the history illusion. We actually find it easier to think about the past than we do about the future. And the amount of change that we have now available to us through connectivity and through connected devices is having a huge impact upon our lives. And many of us, just as individuals, let alone as business people, but many of us struggle with that. We are, in fact, suffering from what Alvin Toffler called future shock, too much change in too short a time. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is really change. And change is at the heart of this idea of the connected marketer. So I can do my entire presentation to you really in one slide. This is what I'm going to argue to you. The more connected devices that you have in your lives, the more constantly connected that you are. The more constantly connected that you are, the more you live in a state of connectedness. You are aware of that connectivity. And the more you live in a state of connectedness, the more it affects your behavior. Those three things added together, the means of connection, the ability to live in a state of connectedness, and this behavioral change leads to what I would term the rise of the connected individual. If there's going to be a connected individual, there must be connected brands, and you must become connected marketers. That is the central argument that I'm going to share with you today. And so your brand will be shaped by your ability and the abilities of your advertisers and the brands that you work with, shaped by their ability to meet the needs of this connected individual. But more importantly than that, your career will be shaped by your ability to learn and relearn the changes that this technology is bringing to all of us. So let's start here. I gave you the argument at the start saying it's about the connected individual. It's not the connected shopper. It's not the connected consumer, connected patient, connected voter, but connected individual. We are those other things for only moments of time. We are always connected. I don't need to go through this bit with you. You know that it's the first thing at night that many people look at, last thing at night, first thing in the morning. Some of us are even connected to devices when we're asleep. When you entered this venue this morning, one of the very first things you did was look for Wi-Fi, because we have to live in this state of constant connectivity. So Wi-Fi is making connectivity ubiquitous everywhere that we go. Neatly, Rupert Murdoch described the world as being split between digital natives and digital immigrants. I don't think that's true anymore. In fact, I think we just live in a world of digital dependence. You kind of get that. And you know that mobile causes and enables behavioral change. Many of you will have seen this picture before. It's from Nelson Mandela's funeral. So when you know that two world leaders and David Cameron have an ability to think it's acceptable to take a photograph of themselves at someone's funeral, then you know that something has changed. And in fact, while I was watching all of this, the first two presentations this morning, I wish I had stood at the back of the room and taken a photograph of all of you taking photographs of the slides on stage, because nobody writes anything down anymore. We just take photographs of what's there. So we know that our behavior has been changed by these devices. And this state of constant connectivity is much more important than the device that we are connecting with. Anybody that is connecting with any of your brands, your publications, has a means of connecting to their digital selves alongside the physical product that you're giving them. We live in a world of instant gratification, what Google calls micro moments. And this illustrates to me why you're only a connected consumer for a tiny amount of your time. If I said to you now there was a book I think everybody in this audience should read, say something like The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly, you should all be reading that. You can take out your phones, order that book in an instant or add it to your wish list, and then carry on listening to me. For 30 seconds out of my 20 minutes, you will become a connected consumer, but for the rest of the time, you are still a connected individual. So that ability is retained by you. And for the younger the people are in the audience, the less they are likely to see a differential between being digital and physical. They are the same thing. And in fact, the youngest generations of ours that are now growing up, our children, are never disconnected. They will never know a world of being disconnected, in fact. And the more we add connectivity, the more devices that we add, the more we'll be connected. And as already been said quite articulately this morning by both speakers, the more we add in other tech like VR and AR and artificial intelligence, it just multiplies the points of connectivity in our lives. And the biggest brands in the world are accepting this, and they are changing what they do because we have changed how we are. So stop thinking of yourselves as being somehow separate at work and separate in your personal lives. We have changed our behavior, and so our brands around us need to change our behavior. So if there are connected individuals, we must have connected brands, we must have connected marketers. Connected marketers understand the needs of connected individuals. They shape themselves around that. A simple connected brand is one that says, we've got a physical product, let's make a great digital wraparound. So I fly Virgin Airlines to the States every 6 weeks, and I use the mobile booking, and I use the mobile boarding pass. If they didn't have that, I probably wouldn't use them. I would probably go to a different airline because I've got so used to that behavior. Equally, you can have a digital product, but has a physical component to it. If Amazon's delivery service did not work as well, it wouldn't be a successful company. No matter how great their e-commerce is, there's still a physical element to what they do. Great connected brands take those two things, physical and digital, and they merge them together. They create better experiences. So when you check into a Marriott hotel in the States now, you can check in either at the front desk with a person or on your mobile device. You can open the room with a plastic card or on your device. You can use room service on picking up the telephone or on your device. Or everything is merged and synchronized together. The best retail experiences are now merging in digital experiences into the store because they recognize that their consumers are doing exactly that same thing. The best printing examples that I see in the world are people who make not only transfer the physical product into the digital sense, but expand upon it and give you better content and expanded content if you have the digital version as well. And of course, Pokemon Go last year gave us the best example of merging physical and digital together at the same time, to such an extent that you forgot about which one was which. You could only play the game if you were using both at the same time. And very quickly, the users started to forget that they had to be using augmented reality in order to make it work. We also know that every surface will become digital. Every product will become digital through the Internet of Things. So there'll be more and more connection, more and more means of creating these super connected brands. And the super connected brands, will be the ones that add in sensorial and emotional experiences. They're the ones that say not only is it physical, digital, but there ought to be more to this. A brand that really gets this well, who understands how to merge those things together and also solve a customer problem, is Starbucks. Starbucks have figured out how to blend digital experiences into the physical world, and the thing that they have done best that illustrates that is their mobile order and pay app. The ability to order the coffee that you want on your mobile phone while you are walking to the store in the US, the UK. I don't know if it's here yet in Germany and other parts of the world, but you can order it on your phone through their loyalty app, paying through mobile payments, getting your mobile loyalty points, walk into the store, have them shout, Paul, walk to the end of the counter, pick up a physical product that definitely has a sensorial element to it, and then walk out again. The whole thing is not designed to show that Starbucks can be clever with technology. The whole thing is designed to take away the problem of queuing at the busiest times of the day. So they have merged and synchronized their digital and physical experiences together. And everything that Starbucks does is about creating an emotional connection with you. From getting someone to shout your name to come and collect your coffee, through giving you personalized information within the app that they serve. So they're very good at understanding that there is a need to bring together physical, digital, emotional, and sensorial experiences all together, what we would call 4 human dimensions. So when you look at the best brands and you look at the ways in which they are doing that, you can either work out backwards from what they're doing, or as we've done, work with many hundreds of brands around the world and figure out the best practice of all those things together. And what we see is 3 common elements to what everybody's doing. First of all, they work on those 4 human dimensions I talked about: physical, digital, sensorial, and emotional. Secondly, they figure out that actually connectivity has more than one thing to it. It has actually 7 different layers. I don't have time in my short 20 minutes to go through all of those. So in fact, what I'm going to focus on is the 4 key tasks that marketers undertake within the best connected brands. What are the things that they are doing that allow them to be more connected and more engaged with their audience? It's these 4 things now. They build understanding of who their connected audience is. They enable that connected audience. They remove the barriers to engagement for that connected audience. And they find ways to be of service to those. So what I'm going to do in my final 10 minutes is to talk about each of those 4 things in together. How do you build understanding? Of course, there are the basic ways of doing it. We can do research. We can have access to our own data, second and third party data. We can use all that combined together with data science. We should be thinking about behavioral economics as well, because people don't behave the way that they say they do. They behave the way that they actually do. We should be asking and listening to our readers and to our brands and to our connected audience. But most of all, what we should be doing is using journey mapping or experience mapping. We should be figuring out all the points in the journey of either the reader or the consumer or the connected individual, as I would rather have it. Think about how the connected individual connects with your brand, all the points in their journey, and figure out what points should be digital, what points should be physical, where do you have an opportunity to create an emotional and sensorial experience that goes with that. We have to do that. We have to understand the audience better, because we know that attention is really difficult to get. We know that we live in an attention-starved era. Distraction is the new normal for this audience. Research is changing to allow us to do that. It allows us to connect better with people at the precise moment they are engaging with our products. But more than that, what we can look at is our digital signals from everything that we do. These signals reveal insights about us, and those can be multiplied by the context in which you have captured those digital signals. In other words, everything that you do in a digital channel produces insights about who you are or who your audience is, and you can then multiply that by the location, the time, and the connections, and everything else they've got to produce a better understanding of who they are. Or more importantly, and it was mentioned in both presentations this morning, capture the signals of intent, because that's what the brand marketers want. That's what they really want to know, is when are people intending to do something and act, because that's the moment we most want to connect with them. Those moments are often when people are asking questions about themselves, or they're asking questions that your brand can solve for them, or your publication can solve for them. Increasingly, all of those questions are being put to mobile phones, because increasingly what we do is we reach for our mobile phone and ask the question because it's there sitting next to us. Aiding discovery, answering questions, is actually the #1 thing that the top 5 websites in the world do. That's what they're about, helping us find access to content. And we should be thinking about how we enable that for our audience. So we should always start with asking ourselves, re-asking ourselves, what is the need that we are trying to solve? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Secondly, we should be looking at how do we enable our audience. What we should do here is recognize there's no linear journey for our audience. They're not going from awareness to advocacy for our brand or for our publication. Everybody has an individual journey. That increasingly, we expect those journeys to be personalized to us. We have to build, as was rightly put into that last presentation, there's a ton of marketing out there. We have to build a marketing stack. We have to know how to add all those different technologies together to create the result that we want. We have to move away from thinking about our audience in broad segments, and we have to think about ourselves as being omni-channel. So let's examine each of those. If you Google the phrase journey mapping, customer journey mapping, you will end up with hundreds of different pictures. Frequently, the most popular one that comes up in this one is this one from McKinsey. What they say is there's no linear journey. And that's right, there isn't a linear journey. And it's a circular thing, and people go round and round in that linear journey. The problem I find with the McKinsey one is it's all about us as marketers and about brands. But that's not the way we think. Those are not the words that we use as consumers. So you are much better off thinking about how can I help my audience find? How can I help them choose? How can I help them buy? How can I help them experience, share, and love or like the product or the publication that they're connecting with? Simply changing the language that you use changes your mindset and will change the way that you approach combining digital, physical, emotional, and sensorial experiences all together. We need to move away from thinking about our audience as being made up of great big blocks of people who are all the same because of their demographics or because of their geographic location. At the very least, we need to move to a world of personas, grouping people by common behavioral traits. But the reality is that we need to move towards profiles because we have all come to expect an individual and personalized experience. And I'll touch on that again in a moment. Our third key thing is how do we remove barriers to engaging with us? How do we do that? How do we simplify the lives of our consumers and our readers? And we have to do that because no one wants a complex world. Nobody likes complexity. We all want the simplest possible route that we can go down. And when you look at the people who are good at doing this, they are great at stripping away things in their lives that mean they have to make too many decisions, ask too many questions. So you see stuff like MasterCard. Instead of asking you to enter 16 digits and the expiry date and the CVS number at the end, why ask you to do that when they can just use your fingerprint or facial recognition? That just makes it easier for you. When you buy wine from Amazon, for example, who are kings of making things simple, instead of asking you, do you actually know anything about wine, all they ask is 3 simple questions. What country do you want it to come from? Or what food are you eating with it? Or what would you like it to taste a little bit of? In that way, they are simplifying the selection of products for us. And of course, as was already mentioned this morning, they're making that even more simple by making that voice enabled. Our final task then is how can we be of service to the individual? Again, that's about understanding who they are. It's about recognizing them. It's about automating the process in which we deal with them. Again, it's about personalization. And critically, it's about contextual relevance. Here's the key point I want to make here about serving people. The data that you collect, you should be using that to create value with and for the connected individual, not from. Too often, the first impulse of marketers in any world is to think, now I've got this data, how can I exploit it? And actually what you should be thinking is, how can I create a better experience for my user, for my reader, for my target audience? How do I make life easier for them with the data that I've got? Some of that stuff could be used for this, because this is actually how we expect personalization to be. We expect anybody to start to do this. If you think about any of the best digital products in your lives right now, you expect that of them. You think about your mobile banking app that probably everybody here uses. You expect all of those things from them. So once we have an expectation of those things, we don't go back. And you're not competing against each other in this audience. You're not even competing against the best of the CPG or FMCG world in terms of how you do things. You're competing against the best digital experience there is, which generally speaking comes from GAFA, the Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Axis. Those are the people you're competing against because those are the people who set the bar in terms of this is how digital innovation should work. This is how digital engagement should work. all of those brands are moving towards hugely personalized experiences. Because you know what? When it really counts, when it really matters, we want personalized experiences. For all the people who are in this conference, when you leave here at lunchtime, if you walked out of this door and you used Google Maps to find your way to your hotel, to a bar, or anywhere else, we would all expect Google Maps to give us an entirely different personalized experience. And that's the mindset that we are bringing to everything else that we experience in the digital space. And as I said, Amazon are kings of doing this. You will see that everything that Amazon does is about making your experience more and more personalized. We also need to recognize, of course, that all of that requires big data. But not big data as some great big amorphous one big lump together, but big data as a set of things that can help us influence small decisions. Because what big data can do, particularly through a mobile device, is help us reach the right person with the right message in the right time and the right place. Something else that came up in both those earlier presentations this morning. All of that is difficult to do at scale. But you can do that through the amount of marketing technology that's available. You can automate all of that. You can do individual marketing at scale if you get to grips with the technology that can deliver that. To do that, you will either have to become masters of data science, or you will have to hire people who are good at doing this stuff for you. I'm going to leave you this final message. It's not all about data on its own. There's still room for creativity. There's still room for problem solving and critical thinking and collaboration and all of those what other people might think of as soft skills, but actually will become even more critical as AI takes over the database decisions. So, in the end, as a connected marketer, what I would like to make you think of, going back to the start of our story, which is the start of the Dark Ages, coming out of the Dark Ages into the Renaissance, is a connected marketer is a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman. They are masters of everything. They try everything. They pull in insight and innovation from every part of the world that they can. Because in the end, marketing is a mixture of science and art. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I had to do it at such high speed, but hopefully you got enough from that to enjoy it. Thank you.